Hi everyone, my name is Eric, and I'd like to share a game with you that I've been working on. It's not currently playable, since it's still in early development, and it doesn't have a name yet, but the working title is Lisa's Game. And I'd like to talk to you about where it came from, where it currently is, and where it's hopefully going to go. It is a first-person, story-focused puzzle game set in a roadside motel. You will play as Lisa, a young woman who is traveling from Los Angeles to New York to start a new life. And as you get into the game, you'll quickly learn that you are in fact dreaming about this roadside motel. And all the puzzles that you solve to find answers about what's going on have a very dreamlike logic to them. But by traversing the motel and solving these puzzles, you'll learn more about Lisa's life, and you'll revisit memories from her life and get sort of an introspective view of why it is that she is leaving Los Angeles and going to New York. Gameplay-wise, it is a combination of, say, Gone Home and Myst. Gone Home because the story is revealed by sort of memories that you find. And Myst because the player is challenged by enigmatic puzzles that themselves reveal the story. So now let me go back and start from where this game started from. If you saw my presentation a couple weeks ago at the Game Funeral, you'll know that I was working on a project called Breakbeats. And about a year ago, I stopped working on Breakbeats. I did so in part because I didn't really have confidence in my abilities to build that game. So when I walked away from that game, I decided I ought to take myself back to school. Not actually, but really focus on learning. So I did that. I spent a few months really focusing on learning. I did tutorials from YouTube and from Unity's learning courses. I also read books on game design. And I watched GDC talks and Game Maker Toolkit, all sorts of good YouTube channels on game design and game development. And I wrote what I called a term paper, and that was an analysis of the game Superliminal. And when I finished that analysis, I published it on Gamasutra. I actually reached out to the one of the producers for the game and did some interviews with him. And then, sort of all along this time, I started doing paper prototypes so that I could apply some of the learning I was doing. I did prototypes mostly of puzzles and a couple mechanics here and there. And eventually I figured, well, I ought to start building these prototypes in Unity, prove that what I've learned about Unity I can apply. And the earliest of these prototypes is where Lisa's Game started. Here is actually the first version of Lisa's Game. It's nothing special. I used some free assets for everything. I was just proving that I could do it. And then I figured I might as well go through as much of the game development cycle as I possibly could with this prototype. So I decided to playtest it with some people. And I playtested it with 2 people. And I took their feedback, a lot of feedback actually, and I created a second iteration. I revamped quite a lot. And here is the second iteration. I upgraded the assets. That wasn't something that I got in feedback, but I upgraded the assets. I improved the logic. I improved the user interface, and I made the puzzles a lot more legible. And then I playtested this version with the same 2 people, and I got more feedback and started iterating again. The third iteration was a major change, I mostly focused on adding a lot more puzzle mechanics. I also added voiceovers, did some visual improvements, some UI improvements, and I got more serious about writing a story. What's happening here? Why are you in a dungeon? Who are you? And why does this dungeon exist? And I hadn't asked those questions during the prototyping because, well, it was just prototypes. And this version, this third version, I playtested that with the same two people. And I started taking their feedback and iterating for a fourth version. This time, though, I was planning the puzzles, mechanics, and levels to reflect a story. And that story was about a man trying to find his way out of a mysterious dungeon. And right about now, you might be thinking to yourself, wait a second. Didn't he say earlier that this was a game about a young woman in a roadside motel, not a man in a mysterious dungeon? And yeah, that is the case. So I need to explain how we got from here to there. And that brings us to the Summer Slow Jam this year. During the first Summer Slow Jam this year, I worked with two people on a game called Memento Mori. And those two people were Kylie Briggs, who did music, audio, and some artwork, and Lynn Dewhurst, my partner, who helped write the story. And for me, the big pivotal moment in that game's development is when I sat down with Lynn and asked them, hey, can you help me write like 7, 8, 9 little short lines of dialogue? And in 2 hours, Lynn had written what I think is an absolutely beautiful story that focuses on death and regret, but has a very light side about the love and happiness of the main character's life. And they did so in 8 lines of dialogue to tell this very full story. But once we finished Memento Mori, Lynn said that they'd be interested in working on other games with me. So, a couple weeks later, we started talking about this man in this dungeon. And we decided to get rid of the man in the dungeon. And what did that leave us with? Well, a first-person puzzle game, which we both really love that genre. And I was perfectly willing to throw out the dungeon and the man. It was just a placeholder. So Lynn took lead now on the narrative, so I could focus more on asset creation, puzzles, game logic. And we worked together on the story because there's still a lot of back and forth with this. But we started hammering out the story, and we decided it would center on Lisa, a 20-year-old woman working in not working in a roadside motel, working in a record store. She's working in a record store in Los Angeles in 1984. But she wants to grow up. She wants to grow up and take control of her life. And she has to leave home to do that. And yeah, so that's where we are right now. We are midstream writing scene-to-scene elements of the story. But now that I have a very clear understanding of what's key to the story, I've been able to focus on building those things in the game. We know now the story starts in a bus station in LA, so I started creating a bus station in LA. We want to have Lisa's dream world include her childhood cat, who can help her think through puzzles and do problem solving and lead her around if necessary. So I started working on the artificial intelligence for a cat. Obviously, this game is going to involve puzzles that are set in a roadside motel. I had been working on puzzles that were set for a dungeon, and now I'm mocking up more puzzles that are appropriate for this setting. And I'm doing so in a tabletop role-playing style so that I can test them without actually building them in engine, and then build them in the engine. But I can get a couple iterations on them outside of the engine before I build them. I've also started working on assets for the roadside motel, and that's where we are. We're mid-production, and obviously there have been some big changes since this game started. It has fundamentally changed. It was probably going to be parkour heavy, very Lara Croft style, but first person originally, and now it's far more mellow, far more story driven, and puzzle oriented, and it feels more like Myst or Superliminal or The Witness, if you know those games. But I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel that many games or really pieces of media like arrive fully formed. So I figured I'd share this journey with everyone so that they see, you know what, that's normal. It's a natural thing that happens. So where do we go from here? Well, obviously I have work to do. There's still models to make and story to write and a lot of puzzles to work on. But before I go, I want to ask something of my fellow PIGSquad members. I am capable of doing a lot of the art and assets for this game, but it is time consuming and it's a bit of an uphill battle for me because it's not my core competency. It takes me away from my core competencies, in fact. I would rather find somebody who is a dedicated artist who is comfortable with 3D modeling. So if you are interested or you know somebody who might be interested in working on this project, let me know and maybe we can do an art test or work on a game jam together, see how we work together. The planned art style is this low poly, low texture, semi-realism that hopefully you're looking at right now. I'm trying to ride that line between like really easy to read, you can tell what it is, but really quick to make. But also, consistency is key, so there's that. Anyway, if you are interested or you know somebody who's interested, you can find me on Twitter or Discord. Feel free to DM. And there you go. It started where it started. It's changed a lot, and we're moving forward. Thanks for watching, and I'll be sure to let folks know as the game develops. See you later.